Good afternoon. This is Mikhailo Shtekel, Media Center, Ukraine, Odesa. We will continue our work for today and we'll discuss what has been found on the bottom of the Kakhovka reservoir. Our guest is Serhiy Nyemtsev, the Cultural Heritage Governmental Monitor of the Ministry of Information Policy of Ukraine. Serhiy, good afternoon. Thank you for being with us today. The first question, what have been already found on the bottom of the Kakhovka reservoir? Unfortunately, we don't have any official information about the findings there. Which see the information on the web. Video and photos from the territories that used to be under the water in the Kakhovka reservoir. But there were a lot of reports, photos of amphoras, old pistols, and also the remnants of clay cutlery. And haven't you received it? Some museums at the Ministry of Culture. You see, this is not official information, so that we can say that some specific objects have been already sent to museums. And also, museums do not report to the ministry about all objects that they receive. And sorry for that. And I'm not talking now about some official register, but I thought that if you have information about what have been already found, if none, what can be found there on the bottom of the Kakhovka reservoir? I'm not sure that this is the right approach to show the situation there. So we can have a different question. Could we found there some archaeological objects there? Yes. Are there some unique pieces? Yes, perhaps there are some pieces like this there. What should be done to record everything properly and to examine it? We need to ensure safety and security of any archaeological activities that can be held there. Because before the Kakhovka reservoir was created, there had been an expedition there, but they were in a haste. That's why the pieces found there were not described properly. That's why it is now difficult to identify the pieces that could be found there in terms of whether they were the part of the settlement that were in the 1950s before the Kakhovka reservoir was created, or it could be dated like with all the like previous periods. So, for example, there can be found some Tkis object, and they used to find them like it was like in several kilometers from the barge on the Dnipro River. But now we cannot identify the point, like the barge, and it is very difficult now to identify the new points on the modern maps. If we can create ideal safety conditions, it would be a very interesting mission for archaeologists to find anything there, to record it, and to register them, and then to send to museums. Perhaps it could change our perception of archaeology of the lower Danube River. You say there are no systematic work. There is no systematic work there. Is it because of the security issues? It is impossible to organize proper archaeological mission before the hostilities stop there. Yes, but it's quite obvious because there is a big territory which is shelled. We cannot organize some systematic mission there. What about the photos that all of us can see on the web and on social media? There were the remnants of church, houses, some cutlery. Who are the people who have found all these objects? And this is a great question, actually. Who are the people? Who are these people, and what are they doing there? And I think that we should study every single case to understand what are the people who are there and who find something there. You say that this could be activists, but this can be some illegal archaeologists and some other people who are there illegally. Because any archaeological work can be carried out pursuant to the Ukrainian legislation, so people should be first properly certified and also receive permission from the Ministry of Culture. This is very difficult to understand how archaeologists work because during peaceful times no one actually learned the details of work and this domain of our activities. Archaeology as a science is not interested in the object alone, but also in the context where it was found. Because if we take an emperor, if we do not know the context of its origin, the place where it was found, what other objects were near it, was it like a burial place or a settlement, and what soil layers are there. If we don't have this information, there is no proper value in such emperor, because we can find such objects like in thousands in different museums. Because there are some unique objects that they can be found only once per 100 years. So usually we can find some serial objects, and they have some scientific significance only if they are found and registered according to all archaeological procedures that regulate all archaeological research. To learn the story of these projects, of these objects, the archaeological activities should be properly organized, and it is possible only after the situation is stabilized. So the best thing we can do now is to leave all the objects there as they are, and to wait for peaceful times when the work can be properly organized there. So if we wait for the full stabilization of hostilities on the territory of the Kakhovka reservoir, it is a no when it can happen. But quite often we see new photos of historical findings there. Now I understand that there is no scientific value for these objects without proper documentation and layers, etc. But if we wait, if we are able to find anything there later, or can we expect that all the objects will be taken by people there? If we follow the legislation of Ukraine, then the objects will be there. But because love of history is not only to run and saying that no one does anything. But as in this situation, it means to be patient and to wait. Local authorities should do everything possible for the citizens not to be endangered on the territories that were covered by the Kakhovka reservoir. We can preserve lives of people, and thus we can also preserve the history that we will be able to study later. As for the expedition that you've mentioned that was in the 1950s, the 50s, right? Yes. Can you tell us what theoretically we can find there if we're able to find the guiding points that you've mentioned? I'm not an archaeologist and I'm not a historian, but I think that, of course, this is a significant damage to the environment. This is a tragedy for us, for people who are victims of this catastrophe. But at the same time, now we have possibility for historical research on that territory. The Kakhovka HPP is a tragedy twice. The first, when it was constructed, because it just altered the lives of those settlements that were covered by water and on the banks of the future Kakhovka reservoir. And now we can see the tragedy once again, because the catastrophe has changed the life of people around. The territory in question had very favorable conditions for people living there in different eras and times, including the Middle Ages. This territory allowed people to cultivate food of animal, vegetable, and water origin. That's why people who used to reside on the banks of that Dnipro River and also the surrounding rivers who flew into the Dnipro River back there. And there are some historical monuments that allowed to identify different cultural settlements like Mikhailovsk, Babina, and we can speak about different archaeological cultures. And there are different other settlements like Ushkanka during the Bronze Age, for example. And there are the dozens of other objects, and we don't have enough time to list all of them. So we can have the whole course of archaeology of the south of Ukraine. And in every topic, we can mention those landmarks that are located on the territories that we are now discussing. This is what we know so far, but potentially there are other monuments that were known to us like 60 years ago. Those people who are now collecting objects from the bottom of the Kakhovka reservoir, you say that this might be illegal archaeologists. I don't say that all of them are like trespassers, but some of them might be. We already received a report from the guard of the Kakhovka reservoir that that have already reported people with metal detectors on these reserve territories near Zaporizhzhia. This could be black archaeologists because we don't know what those people do there or are doing there. And so the information was reported to law enforcement bodies, and it is interesting how the people could explain their presence there. Of course, we understand that there can be some cases of people who just find anything there by chance. What these people should do there? So it is not recommended to go there, try to find anything. But if by some accident you find anything there, ideally you should report the GPS coordinates of that place and to contact the nearest museum as soon as possible. It is great if it's the regional museum, like the Kherson Regional Museum in Kherson and in Dnipropetrovsk region. It could be Yagorsky, Dnipropetrovsk National Museum or other museum, which is also there. And in Zaporizhzhia, this is Zaporizhzhia Regional Museum or Khortytsia. Thank you very much, Serhiy, about telling us what can be found on the bottom of the Kakhovka reservoir. Thank you for explaining people who can find there something by accident, what they should do. Further on, the locals can also try to find something there. Thank you very much for being with us today, and hopefully we'll be able to invite you here once again to discuss history and archaeology. Thank you. Thank you. That was Serhiy Nyemtsev, and we've discussed with him the archaeological findings on the bottom of the Kakhovka reservoir. Stay with us because in 2:30 we will have online briefings from volunteers from Kazakhstan who will tell how they support Ukrainians abroad.